Let's tank Ursoc on heroic mode in the Emerald Nightmare. Now, Ursocs are pretty much a patchwork fight, which basically means it's a tank and spank. However, in heroic, you're going to have to be kiting the boss constantly backwards due to his ability, Roaring Cacophony. Now, this basically is just his raw, and it does a large amount of damage divided by all players within 25 yards. So basically, everyone wants to be within range, so they're taking this damage. This then releases an image of Ursoc, which also drops miasma on the ground, which is the patch of bad, which you need to stay out of. So basically, the goal here is every time Ursoc roars, you are walking backwards, forming a big circle around the room, and when you get back to the original starting point of where you started counting from, you got to go inside the circle to make another mini circle, and then you're going to make another mini circle, and that's pretty much his soft enrage. If your DPS can't kill him by that time, you got really big problems because everywhere's just going to be covered in miasma and Ursoc images, which are just going to absolutely paste you. As well as each one he does drop causes a 10% stacking damage increase effect on the other raws, so you're just going to end up wiping to that as well. So you need to be doing as much DPS as you can, not moving the boss too much so the DPS don't have to move too much, and keep doing it like that. It's kind of one of those basic tank things you need to learn where you don't want to move the boss too much, but you need to move them in enough so that the DPS can actually hit the boss, but you don't want to over move it so they're not running too much as well. So a good guide that we did was we pretty much was killing Ursoc once we did a full lap around the outside of the room, and we got Ursoc into just started shimmying in to start making the second circle. That's our DPS gauge, and that was actually with using the 3 tank strat that we came up with to make it so that our tanks didn't really have to worry about too much of the debuff swapping or even learning how to do it. But on the second group we ran, we actually did do just 2 tanks because the actual damage Ursoc does isn't too high. But for the game we was going in, it was a bit like dangerous to actually 2 tank it. So I will be going over how to do both these strats. The 3 tank one's a lot simpler, and the 2 tank strats just using externals and your own cooldowns effectively, especially during his enrage. So the 2 main abilities that Ursoc's going to use are Overwhelm and Rend Flesh. Now, these come out at different times, so we'll first cast Overwhelm, then he'll do a Rend Flesh, then back to Overwhelm. And what Overwhelm is going to do is whatever tank is currently tanking him, it's going to inflict 1,674,000 physical damage, and this increases physical damage taken by 15% and increases damage taken by the debuff Rend Flesh by 150% for 12 seconds. This effect stacks. And the other debuff Rend Flesh will do a similar thing where it will inflict the current target, dealing 1,495,000 physical damage and an additional 875,000 physical damage every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. So what you want to be doing with these debuffs is making sure one tank's taking Overwhelm and the other tank's taking the Rend Flesh, because if you mix these 2 debuffs together on one tank, he's going to get absolutely trucked and most likely going to end up dead on the floor without cooldowns running, because the damage that both these debuffs put out together is ridiculous, even on heroic mode. So the other thing we need to be watching out for is the ability Momentum, and Ursoc's going to charge through all players to his target, inflicting 535,000 physical damage to all targets in his path and knocking them back. These players suffer 500% increased damage from Momentum for 50 seconds. This ability goes along with the ability Barreling Impact, which is when Ursoc reaches his marked target, he inflicts 2,500,000 physical damage to all players. This effect is reduced by each player Ursoc has charged through. So basically, with these 2 abilities, what your raid team will be doing is having 2 groups and soaking the momentum debuff each time. So you'll have one group going one time, then the second group will go a next time, and then they'll rinse and repeat that for the whole fight every time momentum is cast. Now, it's important for us as tanks to understand how this ability works and to know the hitbox of Ursoc, because if you're just a little bit off center from, say, his nose, you can actually get clipped by momentum, and if you're not tracking your debuffs very well, you could easily take a second momentum stack and it'll just one-shot you, because you definitely don't want to be taking 2 of this during this fight, because it's just kind of a bad time. And I've seen it once or twice where I've actually managed to get a stack and I'm like, how the hell did I do that, even though I wasn't anywhere near the where the charge was going, and that's just because the person who's ran out has just gone a little bit off center from the marker, and this has made Ursoc run at a funny angle, and it's just slightly clipped me. So you really need to be aware of where that player is going and when momentum's coming, so you can definitely not be anywhere near where he's going to be charging, because you definitely don't want to get to. You just look like a total idiot, and we don't want that to happen, guys. So when I'm not tanking Ursoc, I always go on the opposite side of the raid, unless someone dies and they do need an extra soaker. Then the tank who's not currently tanking Ursoc is more than welcome to go and help soak one stack of the debuff. But to be safe, always stand on the opposite side of Ursoc, or say the raid is on his left side to where you are, you can go to his right front just to be safe. Always be extra safe rather than like risking it, because it's just not worth dying for and wasting a battle res. The last ability we need to watch out for is Blood Frenzy, and Ursoc enters a mighty rage at 30% health remaining, increasing attack speed by 20% and damage done by 25%. This is the time in the fight where you want to be using your external cooldowns and your cooldowns like Shield Wall and like 20% damage reduction abilities basically. So now let's have a look at the 3 tank strat for this fight. So the only real reason for doing this is if your tanks are always messing up with taunts or they're not using the defenses properly, and it just makes the damage on your tanks overall a lot less because there's very little room for error. All you've got to do is when a debuff goes out, the next tank in the taunt rotation taunts, and you just repeat this for every debuff that goes out. It doesn't matter which debuff goes out, you're just going to taunt, because by the time the next debuff goes out, say tank 1 taunts, tank 2 taunts, then tank 3 taunts. By the time tank 1 taunts again, his debuff's fully dropped off. So you don't really have to worry about the debuffs at all, because the first application on Heroic doesn't deal any damage. It's when it starts getting to the second and third stack of Overwhelm or the Ren Flesh where the damage really starts to ramp up. And that's pretty much it for the 3 tank strat. You're just going to walk the boss backwards around the room, taunting constantly. It is a little bit of a pain in the ass to move the boss, but it is doable. And the only reason you would do this is if your tanks are dying, and that's the reason you can't progress onto this boss. Now, for the 2 tank strat, it's a little bit harder and a little bit more thinking for your tanks, because what's going to happen is tank 1 is going to take all the overwhelming debuffs, and then tank 2 is going to take all the Ren Flesh debuffs. Now, this swaps after the boss Ursoc does his momentum ability, and then your tanks will then swap debuffs. So tank 1 will then be taking Ren Flesh, and tank 2 will be taking Overwhelm. This is because of how the timers work for the boss. So on momentums, you're going to be making sure that you take this other debuff and making sure you're moving the boss backwards every time he does his raw ability. And apart from that, you just need to make sure that once you hit 30% health that you're rotating your bigger cooldowns when you're taking 2-3 stacks of Overwhelm or Ren Flesh, so that you're not going to be getting absolutely trucked off the boss. Apart from that, there's not too much to go over. It's a pretty simple fight on Heroic and Normal. Apart from on Normal, obviously you're not moving the boss, you just stand there and AFK pretty much. Really simple fight, guys. I hope this guide helps you get the kill. Please comment, let me know if you did the fight any differently, if you had any secrets to how to handle the raw and the patch on the ground, because that'll help me in our mythic strategies. And I hope this did help you get the kill. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll be getting my next guide out in the next few days. Thanks for watching.